Hey, what is going on? How y'all doing out there? And what is up? This is Steve here on a Sunday, March 21st. Hope everybody's doing okay today. Quick update on Atlanta Falcons free agency. There is no update. So we just are probably going to have to get used to the fact that it's going to take a while. As predicted, and we talked about this several times. It's not like this is a secret. The Falcons are moving at a snail's pace right now, probably waiting to see what's going to happen and, what the deal is with some of the second and third tier free agents. We knew good and well that we probably were not going to be able to afford the kind of free agents that a lot of the teams are out here getting right now. Not a shock at all. And if anybody had any other ideas, I'm sorry. With the Falcons were going to be second week, third week free agent guys. I think the closest name I heard, if I'm not mistaken, I heard somebody say that we were rumored to be one of the teams interested in Jadeveon Clowney, but I'm saying to myself, for what? If we're going to overpay somebody, I'm not sure that's the one that you go overpay. But all of the other folks are gone. All of the folks that everybody rumored about over the last couple of weeks, all of them, a lot of the re-signings we thought we were going to have, they've all passed by. So right now, we're just in the waiting game. And this is not unexpected, folks. We kind of told y'all at the beginning of this process, we kind of told you before the season is out. We said something before the playoffs started that this was not going to be one of those free agencies for the Falcons where we were going to reach out and start spending money on everybody. Last year, if you thought about the buzz we got when we signed Dante Fowler and signed Todd Gurley to those early contracts, and Gurley's wasn't super lucrative, but it was still a lot of money as far as recent Falcon spending is concerned. So it was a little bit of buzz about it, but right now, we just do not have the money. I think I looked at Spot Track even after we made the signings that we have. I mean, we are still not in a position to make any big-time signings, and we still have to have enough money to pay our draft class. So we are basically rolling with what we have. What we have right now on the team is what you're going to see, what you're going to get. It's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be anybody out of the blue that's going to come to the Falcons. And I mean, they have no reason to come to the Falcons right now. I'm not going to overplay the whole, should we keep Matt, should we get rid of Matt stuff. That's already been determined. Matt's contract was restructured last week. Matt's going to be here. Probably a good chance, barring something interesting, that he'll be here next year. So as I start reaching realities and what's going on with our situation, the nonsense needs to stop. Matt Ryan's not going anywhere, whether we like it or not. Matt Ryan is going to be here in 2021. Get used to it. If you're a Falcon fan, get behind it. Because, look, I'm not telling you to like a person. I never getting you into that. But right now, Matt Ryan is going to be our quarterback in 2021. Like it or don't like it. And I love my Falcons. So I'm going to get behind the Falcons and whatever we do. The draft becomes absolutely critical to whatever plan the Falcons are trying to do right now. And we have so many holes that it's not even funny. We got holes everywhere. We got holes in the secondary. We don't have a legit running back. I think the only squad that's probably, I don't want to say set, but probably as close to set is wide receiver. And they even re-signed Christian Blake. I didn't think they were going to do that, but they re-signed him. So when you start thinking about it, we need a quarterback. We still have to have a backup to Matt. Probably have somebody on the practice squad that needs to come on and at least keep everybody fresh on the second team. We talked about running back. Do the Falcons use a fullback this year? Is Keith Smith in the fold this year? How are we looking at left guard? Has that been determined? Jake Matthews restructured his contract. He's going to be here. Who's going to be at right tackle this year? Is there somebody that's, and I understand, and I say who's going to be at right tackle. McGarry is at right tackle. But where's the depth coming from? Got to have depth on that O-line. Somebody's going to go down. Somebody's going to limp. These are the questions that we're going to have to answer here pretty soon, folks. And as quiet as it's kept, I don't think it's going to be a lot more. There's not going to be any more significant signings for this team, I think, in the next couple of weeks. And if you notice one thing that's been going on, 1-year contracts. They're not breaking the bank on anybody. Which in some ways, could validate my point that maybe, just maybe, the Falcons may still be looking to draft a quarterback at number 4. Maybe. Now, to everyone's point, I understand the thing about, hey, you're not going to have anybody just sit there and just sit on the bench. I get that. But at some point, you are going to have to look towards the future. And the future for this Atlanta Falcons team this year is looking kind of interesting. Because let's put everything in perspective. You had to restructure the highest paid person on your team and one of the top 5 highest people on your team in Jake Matthews. And did you really improve yourself after making those restructures? Did you bring in anybody that you truly say this guy is going to be part of the renaissance of the Atlanta Falcons? I haven't seen it. And maybe there might be some supplementary folks that you might stick in there, for now and see if, they can fill a spot. But there's not anyone. I have no idea who the safety from the Raiders is. I don't know. I never heard of the guy we brought from New England. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend I do. He wasn't a name. And sometimes you have to get folks that maybe not be the Hollywood players. It takes a whole team of folks to make a squad. But I really need to see what these guys are going to be up to. It's going to be interesting to see. We had a name change, folks. Our YouTube channel now is called Steve Sports Lounge. The former Steve Sports Talk and More has switched to that, and the reasons will be showing themselves here in the next few weeks. Steve Sports Lounge, and the number stays the same, 1-877-747-2346. Also on tap, your favorite Atlanta Falcons player of all time. We have had so much Matt Ryan this, Matt Ryan that. We just said we would table a lot of that for today and see if we can hear some talks about some of the great players in Atlanta Falcons history. A lot of people probably already know who mine are, but let me know who you're talking about. Who are your favorite Atlanta Falcons folks of all time? Hey, Lisa, how you doing? Rise up to you. What's up, brother Ron? What's going on? Hey, brother Tidy, how's it going? A rookie quarterback sitting on the bench for his first year isn't a waste. I hate the ideology. The learning, tutelage, mentorship that he will gain will be invaluable sitting behind Ryan and will be a bargain for $8 million per year. As many people have pointed out, Tidy, over the last few years, when we start talking about these quarterbacks who are basically winning these Super Bowls in their first contract, sans Brady, or on a lesser contract, we could have the same thing happen here, folks. It doesn't necessarily have to be where Matt Ryan ends up being the person that leads us to the promised land. I remember that, and it's happened before. Seattle invested money in my man from Green Bay and brought him over and thought it was going to be we thought it was going to be a quarterback challenge, and Russell Wilson ended up winning the job, and my man ended up staying on the bench the whole year. It can happen. I'm still not against drafting a quarterback. I'm not. And I'm not saying that to be stubborn, and I'm not saying that just to be anti-Matt Ryan at all. I'm invested in this team for the long run. And this year is going to be obvious that Matt is going to be at the helm. I think we knew that even if the restructure didn't happen. But looking at his cap hits for the next couple of years, it's going to be hard to ignore that dead money. Unless you just get so much back in return for him that it's worth it. What's going on, brother RJ? Good to have you in today. Again, we're talking about a little bit of free agency, Atlanta Falcons, and also your favorite Atlanta Falcon player. Probably the biggest news of the week wasn't even about current Falcons for us. The biggest news of the week was former Falcon Keanu Neal reunites with Dan Quinn in Dallas. Now, a lot of people are, I've seen it all, good riddance, go ahead. But the story of Keanu Neal it's quite similar. Similar to William Moore, similar to Sean Witherspoon. Flashes of greatness at times. But overall play when you come to Atlanta, he was pretty okay. Nothing special, but okay. Big part of the 2016 team. Really good in 2017. Hard to go beyond there because we know the back-to-back years where he was hurt. And then last year had a pretty good bounce-back year. I thought he was a candidate for comeback player of the year if you didn't have the heroics of Alex Smith over in Washington. And will we miss Keanu Neal? We will. He was a nice force across the middle. He built his reputation on being a strong hitter. Still wasn't quite that great in coverage, but solid Falcon. He's going to Dan Quinn over in Dallas with some thoughts that he might even drop down into the box and play some linebacker. A thought that they thought about here in Atlanta. What really caught my eye was the 1 year, $5 million contract. And those are the things that make me look back at this contract we signed with Matt and Julio and go back and say, whoo, we couldn't afford to do that. Because, folks, 1 year, $5 million, that's a hometown discount. And this is not saying Neal is super great, but on the free agent market, I know he's not a top flight safety, but it's hard pressed for me to believe he couldn't be able to get $6 or $7 million a year. I think a lot of people probably had questions about his injuries and whether he will be durable, but he went where it was safe. He went with somebody who was dealing with him at the University of Florida, somebody who drafted him surprisingly at number 1. He was rated a second-round pick. Did he live up to the number 1 pick? It's kind of hard to tell, the 2 years being hurt. But I think the 3 years he was here, he was definitely solid. But the fact that Dallas stole him for one year, $5 million, extremely similar to the Tevin Coleman situation. When we signed Devontae Freeman to all that money and still looking for dividends from that. And Tevin Coleman went on to San Francisco. Yeah, he got hurt last year, but played a big part in that Super Bowl appearance for San Francisco 2 years ago. Those are the things that make me go back and say, ooh, spending. Jimmy, how you doing? Jimmy says Matt Ryan, his favorite player of all time. Look, if that's your favorite player of all time, that's cool. I figured that might happen. That doesn't hurt. But listen, a lot of people are going to go in that direction. Matt Ryan is the most prolific quarterback in franchise history. It does not faze me one bit that somebody says Matt Ryan is their favorite player. That doesn't shock me at all. Should be. Did a lot for this city. Done a lot for this city. Hasn't embarrassed from a professional standpoint. On the field could be some different stories, but hasn't embarrassed the city of Atlanta. Hasn't embarrassed us as a person, which is very important. Nothing wrong with that. I can deal with that. Orion, we don't have a backup quarterback on the roster, so it would be smart to get a young arm, and I don't have to pay much and can learn from Matt. Yeah, Orion, we are going to get a quarterback. I think there could be some thought with some of the financial moves made, whether getting the quarterback at number 4 is still in the plans with the restructuring we just did of Matt. In my opinion, if that's a high-rated player and it's a high-rated quarterback that you think that can help this team, I still could think you go get him. That's no disrespect to Matt. Matt needs to be pushed. Matt needs to look over his shoulder and see somebody throwing the ball 20 yards down the field longer than him. He needs somebody he looks over at practice, and when he scrambles to the left and his is incomplete, and the backup scrambles to the left and his is right on target, right on the money. He needs that. And he needs to see the youth coming behind him. He's never had a challenge. Challenges for Matt Ryan, Chris Redmond, Matt Shaw. Was DJ here 1 year? Or was that prior to Matt? That might have been prior to Matt. I don't even know. I think Gilbert Renfro was way before that. But just there has not been any solid quarterbacking behind Matt. I think it was Matt Sims was here for a quick cup of coffee. But that's it. And even if you regulate yourself to the second tier quarter and third tier quarterbacks, the Kevin Mons, the Jamie Newmans, the Kyle Trask, the folks like that, still possibly to push him, even though I would like some of the higher rated guys to push him out. Not push him out, but push him to make him better professionally. Matt has had no worries for the past 13 years. He knew every time he walked on the field in training camp, what they going to do? Put Schaub out there? But this year, if you do that, you need to hear those footsteps. No doubt. Brother JR says the ultimate can kickers can't keep kicking this oil can down the road. I absolutely believe you. Look, man. The sad thing is, I don't want to be guilty because I don't want to be that person, that average person that just comes and says three of my most words in my hated phrase, same old Falcons. Because it's not the same old Falcons, whether you want to believe it or not. There are new people making decisions. And these guys this year in 2021, folks, as much as y'all don't want to, you got to give them a mulligan. You have to. They have nothing to work with. They've been given nothing. They've been given a checkbook that's already in the red. They've been given a bank account with insufficient funds. And now they're expected to go out and now equipped with 9 draft picks, go out and fill out a roster. And we're not talking about a roster where you have people already on the team and they're fighting for positions. We're talking about a roster that you need positions. We must have safeties. We must get a quarterback. We have to get another linebacker. We must fill out the depth on the defensive line. We must get stronger on the offensive line. All that looks like it's going to be done with extremely cheap free agents and your draft picks. Most other teams, by the time they get to their 6th and 7th round picks, they're like, okay, that's people for the practice squad. We looking for starters. We're in the 5th and 6th round this year. We're going to be looking for people that say, if by chance something goes wrong, you might be in there protecting Matt on the offensive line. If something goes wrong, you might be the defensive lineman trying to rush in and get the quarterback on the other side. And that's not the new regime's fault right now. The moves they are making right now are moves they have to make because there's no other way to do it. Can't make up money. We can't print up the money to sign these guys. You got to figure it out. Tidy Steve, do you think maybe Neil didn't want to return to Atlanta and maybe gave us the cold shoulder? Just a thought. It could be, most of the time as it goes with these contracts, especially with the first round picks, when you sign them to the 5th year, like we did with Neil, the majority of the time they work out that contract before you even get to free agency. If you're case in point, Ridley, they need to be working on Ridley's contract now. They need to be figuring out what they're going to do with Ridley now. Because the disrespect of it from a player is to say, well, if you weren't going to do that, 1, why hang on to me for a 5th year? And 2, you should have been trying to renegotiate with me all along. Neil might be like, no, you guys didn't want to talk to me? I'll take my bags elsewhere. And just to make you feel a little harder, I'm going to follow coach. And I'm telling y'all, listen, this is not a Dan Quinn is the greatest speech. Dan Quinn might thrive in that DC position. Don't be shocked if Dallas has a pretty good defense this year. Not that they didn't even have good pieces, but don't be surprised if they come out looking a lot better, a lot faster, flying to the ball a little bit more. Because Dan Quinn is that cheerleader. Dan Quinn is that rah-rah guy. And as a coordinator, that's a perfect place for him. Head coach might have been over his head. But that DC position, oh, that may right down his alley. So for Keanu Neal with Dallas, marriage made in heaven. And I can't remember my source. I don't want to, I think it was ESPN. It could have been, I think it was NFL.com. They're saying that DeMonte Casey was actually talking to them as well. No shock. And Casey is one of those guys that, yeah, he definitely gave us the nice year when he was catching the tip balls and made the 7 interceptions and tied for the NFC lead that year and whatever. Decent player, definitely. He wasn't going to get a great contract wherever he went. But these guys, as I tried to tell folks, the folks coming in here may not have been impressed with the folks that they picked. Everybody might not have been enamored with Keanu in his hitting across the middle. People might not have been impressed with KZ and being able to ball hawk like he did for a year and a half. These are different eyes. And those guys might be saying, you know what, this is my chance to upgrade. So instead of sitting back here trying to pretend like these guys are great, let me see what I'm going to do. RJ, how do you think the GM will address the D-line and edge rushers and the offensive guard and center position? RJ, just like I said, I think you're going to be looking at draft. I think the trenches are going to be done during the draft, unless you may be able to find somebody. I think what you need is some veteran leadership. Don't be surprised if they look for a center. As much as Matt Hennessy was thought to slide into that job, and I know he got a little bit of a preview the last couple of games, and not to say that he may not be good eventually, but it would be nice to maybe have another veteran on the line. You still need to get younger, maybe with the offensive line. But look, Jake Matthews has not been horrific. I know a lot of people want to say that, but he really hasn't. He's been okay. And matter of fact, this year, I didn't hear a lot from Jake Matthews, which is good. When I'm hearing a lot from folks, that's when I'm worried about him. So I think you look at those positions being addressed in the draft. Tidy, don't forget the prolific talent such as Edlin and Benker. and here's the funny part, because if you go in some of these groups, man, and I love being a part of some of them, because it's so interesting how this extra padded love is for Matt and how great he is as this quarterback. I'm not disagreeing with him being very solid. I'm not disagreeing that Matt did take us to some of the highest highs when he was, doing his thing. But you gotta have somebody to push you. You must. Think of the level of backup quarterbacks that we've had. We didn't have a Montana Young situation here. We didn't have a Bledsoe Brady situation here. I mean, Cam Newton, for all practical purposes, got pushed out by a journeyman last year. He was hurt a little bit, but they let that dude stay on the field some. Some teams are ready to make the move. The umbilical cord has to be cut sometimes when it comes to some of these guys at quarterback, especially if you're not giving us recent success. No matter what you think about him as a stat guy and what he gives you stat-wise. I'm saying all of this on March 21st, folks, and I'm going to tell you what, I hope Matt lights it up this year. I hope Matt does all the same things he does numbers wise. I think as he does the things with interceptions, he did not throw a lot. He is nowhere in the Jameis Winston category. I hope he leads us this year. I hope he's able to close games this year. And I hope we go back to the playoffs. But that still doesn't mean in 2022 that the talk in this town is, okay, but we have to turn the page. In Pittsburgh, do you actually think some of those folks up in Pittsburgh are sitting up there celebrating and popping champagne from Big Ben coming back this year? Do y'all actually think that? Now, I know they have Mason Rudolph up there, so I know they're probably not that ready to get rid of Big Ben. But I think there are some people up there that are saying, even with the Super Bowls, even with some of the success, you saw the games like I saw them last year. Ben wasn't the same that last quarter of the season last year. Kind of the same with Breeze last year, even though he was hurt. But near the end, he wasn't the same quarterback. Those guys are getting older. And instead of us waiting until Matt breaks down, the thought of bringing somebody in is not so much as just saying bye-bye to you, Matt. It's just saying, let's bring somebody in to help compete. That's all. My brother Vinny, how you doing, man? What are we going to do with the fourth pick? We just talking about that, Vinny. Again, I know that it's very mixed. A lot of folks are still thinking that we're going to trade down. I wouldn't be shocked if that's one of the scenarios. There are teams right now that need a quarterback that may be needing to jump up. I think about Chicago. I think about what Carolina. I don't see us making a deal with our division foes. I'm looking at Philadelphia that might be willing to go up and find some competition for Jalen Hurts, even though I think they might bring a veteran back. They were rumoring even bringing back Nick Foles to Philadelphia to come back and help him out with that as far as that's concerned. It's a very good question. I'm not against, at this point, I'm not against anything. I'm really not. I've even come around from a last week or two where people were talking about, Steve, Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts will be a good pick. I'm not sure if I would pick him if he was number 4. Maybe if we traded down and actually got a couple of picks, maybe in the second round or something, I would think about getting him at number 8, number 9 or something like that. But yes, we need a linebacker. Yes, we need an offensive lineman, specifically a tackle, possibly. More a guard. We literally need a guard. We have to have somebody inside that's going to be on the side that we could never fill. The James Carpenter big void that he left. Void while he was out there, I should say. But we have to address those needs, folks. Brother Rusty, how are you, man? Steve, do you remember when I told you on one of your lives about 2 months ago and said Canu was going to Dallas? Yeah, they were taking our sloppy seconds, coaches and players alike. Well, we were also in the situation, Rusty, and I don't think that was look, you did say it, but I'm not trying to be funny. That wasn't a stretch. I mean, especially when Dan Quinn went to Dallas. If you knew we weren't going to re-sign him, I mean, you're talking about somebody who's dealt with him personally since the days of Florida. So that, yeah, not too much of a stretch. But yeah, he definitely made his move. And don't be surprised if others follow, if KZ follows. If I haven't heard about Brian Poole. If Brian Poole's not re-signed by anybody else, don't be surprised if he makes his way down. I know Dallas also had a lot of pieces in place as it was, but look, those guys, Dan Quinn made them relevant that 2016 year. He made them relevant. So what better way to get that shine back to go back to the guy who helped that shine? Not a surprise. RJ, I love Matt Ryan and all the respect in the game for him, but it's time to start preparing for the future, as though it might be for some fans. The truth is the truth. It's time to prepare for the future. I look at it. I had a very good analogy that just popped in my head, and for some reason, my ageism just came and ripped it away. But your point is spot on, RJ. To not be afraid to make that decision. I'm pretty sure when Bill Belichick had Drew Bledsoe on a winning team and he got hurt, and Tom Brady came in and kept the thing rolling. Don't get me wrong, he did a great job. And the thought was, when Drew Bledsoe came back, there were a lot of people saying, well, Drew should get his job back. Because Drew I think he could have played in that Super Bowl. But he didn't. And that was a tough call. But sometimes that's what you have to do as coaches. Now, the one thing this regime hasn't done is a lot of talking through the media, which is a good thing. Sometimes you can give yourself away too much. You don't want to tell everybody everything you're thinking. And the good thing is we haven't made enough moves to really have a good conversation with them anyway. But who knows what those guys are going to do on draft day? You never know. I'm holding out hope that they are on the same page as I am as far as looking towards the future with this team. But just don't be surprised. I'm ready for anything. I'm ready for a draft day trade. I'm ready for a pick. The number 4 pick is Justin Fields. I'm ready for the number 4 pick is Penei Sewell. I mean, I'm looking for everything. And that's the beauty of this situation about the changing of the guard. That with Thomas Dimitroff, you almost had Thomas Dimitroff had a pattern of picking who you never thought he would pick. There have been few times, with the exception of 2008, that he has actually picked the person that he should have picked. There was no doubt in 2008, to me, he should have chosen Matt Ryan, even though there were a lot of people who should be happy that he didn't get Glenn Dorsey. There were a lot of people thinking we should have gone that route. Think about how long it would have taken the franchise to jumpstart then, for those of you who remember that draft in 2008. Glenn Dorsey was supposed to be the 10-year Aaron Donald type defensive tackle that we need. Ask anybody who was around back then. That was supposed to be the big decision for the Falcons. Turned out to be one of the pluses that he did. Tidy, I would love for us to be able to get Brian Poole on this team for an inexpensive contract. It will be interesting, Tidy, because is his loyalty going to be to Atlanta Falcons, or is loyalty going to be to Dan Quinn and him taking an undrafted free agent? You see what I'm saying? On that team. I think I would tend to believe it would be towards Dan Quinn and bringing on an undrafted free agent to his team. As much as, yeah, he balled out when he was here, no doubt. And balled out as his role was concerned. That's what I mean. I'm not trying to make him an all-pro. I'm just saying he did, as an undrafted free agent, he did a great job. Unexpected job. Brother JR says, get ready for a scheduled 4-12 season. Buy whatever you need to be ready to cope. Grady isn't taking any new Falcon patience. Listen. Temper your expectations. As John says, this could be an ugly ride. This could be a long ride. This could be this could be worse than this past season. It could be. If you look at last year and look at the number of either last second losses or one possession losses that we had, there are some that may think, you know what, tinker here, tinker there, keep Matt, and we automatically win 9 games. As a Falcon fan, I hope you're right, but I'm just not feeling it. I'm just really not feeling that. The love for Matt is awesome. Great that he has a fan base. Great that you have people that remember the good things you did. The dude is a multiple-time Pro Bowler, one-time All-Pro, MVP. People don't do that every day. But it doesn't mean that you can't turn the page. Jerry Rice did not retire a San Francisco 49er. Emmitt Smith did not retire a Dallas Cowboy. Junior Seau did not retire a San Diego Charger. And I can go on and on down the list. Am I saying that Matt hasn't been an asset? Foolish of me to say that. Matt has been a great part of what we've done over these last 13 years. Do you realize that Cleveland, who all of a sudden last year is walking around like they're the belle of the ball, Cleveland is absolutely one of those teams that would have loved to have the success that the Falcons had. Before this past year, Tampa Bay would sign up for that too, for the last few years that Matt Ryan was in place. No doubt. But at some point, you have to move on. You have to put a pin in it and say, that's it. That's my only thought. That's my only thought. Let's talk about these favorite Falcons in franchise history too. I wanted to keep the talk. We'll keep it going on the Atlanta Falcons and what we're doing currently, to be quite honest, which is just not a lot going on right now. So favorite Falcons of all time, but post them up for me. See what y'all have on the list. I think it's for those of you who've been listening to my lives for the last few years, and I appreciate it as much as we have. There's no secret to who my favorite is. William Andrews was always, when I was younger, that runner that I still, as great as Michael Turner gave us a lot, Gerald Riggs, you can't deny what he did when he was here, and Warrick Dunn as an undersized guy who came in for a few years during the Vick era, and the versatility he showed us during that time. But I'm trying to tell you, since he was drafted from probably the most underrated wishbone background in history from Auburn, as the blocking back for Chuck Muncie and James Brooks at the University of Auburn, or Auburn University, William Andrews came in not expected to be that kind of guy. And when he came to Atlanta during, I think he was drafted in the 1979 season, the 1978 season. If you go back and look at some of what he did as a running back, folks, I'm trying to tell you that you talk about, and no disrespect to what Jamal did, but William Andrews was that guy. Power, speed in the open field. Nobody wanted to tackle him. Had those big 50-inch thighs that just ran you over. And I just remember as a little kid, even before I even had thoughts of wanting to try to play football. Oh, that kid is, oh my goodness. William Andrews. That's the guy. But that's my all-time great. I love Love that guy. Brother David, what's going on? Said, though he wasn't here for long, I still love prime time. Prime time, prime time. And the only thing I regret about prime time is that was when I left to go into the military. I signed up for the military during the year before he was drafted. And I had to see him from afar while I was on the other side of the country in Seattle. And it was just a time where I hate that we didn't win more when he was here. I think that's probably some of the reason why, as much as you hear about, how great he was, primetime was great in Dallas. And he was great the year he was with San Francisco. But boy, those few years with Atlanta, if they had the coverage that they had back then, that they have now, oh my goodness. Atlanta may have been, Rankin Smith and the folks up in the owner's booth might have made different decisions. Free agency was a little different back then. But they didn't want to pay him. They didn't realize the worth that Deion Sanders was to this franchise at that time. And keeping in mind, we went through some lean years there, because I think I know we went to the playoffs in 83, but I'm trying to remember, was there any playoffs between 83 and 89? I'm not sure if it was or not. Probably 1-8-8 season in there when the great Dan Henning came in here and did his thing. But yeah, prime time was definitely somebody in this franchise that will always be put in that upper echelon as being one of the greatest players to ever put on that Falcon uniform. It is quite a shame that he didn't get an opportunity to stay here. I think if that had been off the blank, as Dion said when he was, I never forget that line when he was getting the Ring of Honor, and he was saying that he wished that had been his owner. A little small slight to the Smiths, but I think if Arthur Blank was here, Dion would have never put on another uniform, judging by the way he treats these guys. Toddy says, many don't know this, but the Braves tomahawk chop came from Deion Sanders, which he brought up from FSU. Look it up. Oh, I believe that totally. And when we got to when I got to Fort Lewis, and that was the 91 year, and the 91 year was the worst to first and everything. And Dion was in the farm system. I'm not sure if he actually played in the 1991 season or not, but he was still I think in the farm system. But yeah, Dion was a bad boy. And in a different time, Dion would have been getting kind of that Michael Jordan love that he never got a chance to get when he was here. He was definitely one of those guys that did not get his due, if you ask me. One of the other guys that I looked at as one of my favorites, and again, probably dating myself a little bit back then too, was wide receiver Alfred Jenkins, coming out of Morris Brown, being able to make it from an HBCU and getting on to the Falcons. One of the more solid receivers in Atlanta Falcons history. Of course, they didn't pass the ball on any level that they did now. But back then, when they didn't pass the ball around, listen, Atlanta's offense was extremely prolific when you had Alfred Jackson, Alfred Jenkins, Wallace Francis, Junior Miller, and then you could swing the ball out to Kane as the other running back. back when we had the two running back set back in the 80s. Alfred Jenkins was a special guy on the wide receiver. Numbers won't show it. Terrence Mathis will be shown with more numbers, who was solid to shoot. Andre Rison will be shown with probably more numbers than he had. And Roddy White will be shown with more numbers. But if you had a chance, and I wish I could bring back an archive of those great players. I had a link. Somebody shared a link with me about that 1980 team. I had to go back and post that one, because I think that was a YouTube link that I had talking about the success, the team that the greatest team that never won or something like that. Talking about that 1980 team, and I talk about it ad nauseum. I know y'all get tired of me saying. Tidy says, even though you swear I'm a Devontae Freeman's agent, my all-time favorite Falcon is Roddy White. And I've heard you talk about Roddy White too, Tidy. That's not a big shock as far as that's concerned. I actually like Devontae Freeman, to be honest with you. I thought, especially being drafted as low as he did, coming off of that national championship, he gave us a lot. Roddy White is another person that I'm going to go to. It's kind of in a little bit of the vein of the Dion, not for leaving the franchise, but he had those wasted years here with Michael Vick. He was brought in to help enhance the passing game, but by then, I'm not sure Vick even probably knew the play where he was supposed to throw to Roddy. And for those who, don't understand Roddy's defense of Matt Ryan quite a bit, especially online and social media, Matt Ryan made Roddy White, made his name come up in, is he one of the best receivers? Because Roddy White, man, that's a strong dude. Wrestling background. Was it Alabama, Birmingham? All right. University of Alabama, Birmingham. Strong guy. It really was dependable. I think he only had 1 year where he had the yips a little bit where he was dropping the ball. But other than that, solid receiver. Sad the way he went out, the Kyle Shanahan drama. He deserved a better ending to his career, but it was obvious that wasn't going to work out. But Roddy White definitely deserves his name to be mentioned when you start talking about some of the great Atlanta Falcons who've been in this franchise. Definitely. David Starks also says Roddy White. Toddy, if Vick was a better leader, Roddy would have been a better wide receiver those first 2 years. Because I'm going to tell you what, if you remember when Vick came out, Atlanta thought they were going out and doing justice by going to get Peerless Price. And that makes me laugh because they were building that. So, we're giving Vick this weapon, and this weapon is gonna come in here from Buffalo, and he's gonna be the next. He's gonna take Vick to the next level. It's like, yeah, I remember Peerless when he was at Tennessee, and I was saying, yeah, I wasn't sure about that marriage, but Roddy White at least showed the ability to say, yeah, whether Vick's here or whoever the next person is, I'm going to step it up to the next level. But you're right. Vick really wasted him. RJ says, TJ Duncan for me. TJ Duncan, back when the Falcons were inside the 5-yard line and actually had a running back that could get that yard, TJ was that guy. Michigan State came in here part of the DVD backfield. Good times, especially that 2004 season, the good season where we went to the NFC Championship, and he was very much a part of that. Very good player. Got his jersey. I was trying to look and see if it was on my jersey wall, but it's not. But it's in the house somewhere. Trust me. Yeah, TJ was pretty good. Kenzel, it's hard to pick one. My favorites was Scott Case. Oh, yeah. Scott Case, Dion Sanders, and Brian Jordan. Brian Jordan, man, I'm trying to – that's another guy that will kind of – you won't bring his name up quite a bit. But, boy, that was a hard-hitting safety, boy. Brian Jordan was a bad boy when he was here. And truly, I think his – shine was more with the Braves when he ended up going there. And that's in Atlanta history. That's what he'll be known for. But, he was the truth when he was here. And just a nice addition to the team. Tidy, UAB. Yeah, thank you. I thought that's what it was, UAB. Corey, Roddy had that dog in him. Roddy, like, for anybody who closed their eyes and listened to him talk, and you say to myself, for real, that guy, you used to watch Roddy shake folks off of him. Roddy was a strong cat. He would take a 5-yard pass and turn it into 15. Not because of blazing speed, because them cats underestimated him when they tried to tackle him. Roddy was a strong center of gravity type wide receiver. Now, he could go get it, but at the same time, I just think he was a strong guy. David said, you just gave me nightmares talking about Peerless Price. Oh, my goodness. And, Peerless Price. That because he was penciled in as the guy who was going to make Mike Vick better. Because Peerless wasn't here the year that Mike kind of came out of nowhere. He came the next year because that was supposed to take him to the next level. That was supposed to make him that much better. And that was not a good marriage. Tidy, I hate when our fans claim we didn't try and build around Vick. They were doing everything they could to give him an explosive offense. Unfortunately for us and him, the Vick chapter ended way too early in Atlanta. When Brian Jordan, I agree with that because it's funny to hear some people talk about it in 2021, Tidy, because I think a lot of people who I see talking, I often wonder were they actually, as an adult, going to those games and as an adult seeing. I've heard several times, even in this group, they didn't criticize Vick like they criticized Ryan. Now, it could be true that Ryan does get a little more criticism, but Vick got criticized big time in 05 and 05 and 06. Oh my goodness. Vick was still exciting, but people called him out because, to Tidy's point, they were bringing folks in here that was supposed to help. Bobby Petrino was supposed to come in here and run that style of West Coast offense that was going to open up the style that Lamar Jackson was doing down and Teddy Bridgewater were doing down in Louisville. He was supposed to bring that to Atlanta. And then the pieces that they were bringing in for him, it was somebody else. If y'all can help me out, it was somebody else they brought in too offensively. Why am I saying it was a tight end? And it's skipping my mind. I'm going to probably have to go look at this roster that they had back then. But it was somebody else they brought in to help Vick as well. It was just self-destruction, folks. The misconception that Vick wasn't criticized in Atlanta, then y'all didn't listen to Sports Talk, which at that time was bigger than talking about it on Twitter and talking about it on Facebook. They dogged Vick out, no pun intended. They raped Vick over the coals when he couldn't get those passes, and he couldn't make those easy passes. It got to the point where even Vick, as a player who could run and take off, was starting to get criticized for doing that too much. But it's funny that people don't talk about that now, because Vick did not have as much success as people would think. From 2002 to 2007, they went to the playoffs twice. Yes, he won 2 games, but he probably should have won more. And you would argue that last year, where he ran for 1,000 and threw for 3,000, some thought that team should have done a lot more. But as we found out, Vick even said himself, he was not, he was reading the newspaper, reading the press clippings. He was doing all of that. So that comes with it, with the territory. Tidy says when Brian Jordan couldn't get the money out of the Falcons that he wanted, he went to baseball full time and did well. Did well here, did well in St. Louis. More power to him. He did a better job and was paid in baseball. He was pretty solid. Easily a 2020 guy. Toddy also says young Roddy used to do the backwards flip, when he scored. Some of that wrestling stuff, man. Roddy was an athlete. And when you think about when they brought Julio in here, I think a lot of folks thought, I think the consensus was by far Julio was going to end up being who Julio, as his legend goes, a much better wide receiver than Roddy. And he will go down as a better receiver as Roddy White. But Roddy set the pace, man. If you didn't have Roddy on that other side of Julio, I'm not sure you get that drive that Julio had. Julio had somebody on that other side that he had to push. Roddy had somebody that would push him. Roddy saw the footsteps from Julio. That playoff year against the San Francisco in that championship game, when Julio kind of won the game in the first half, should have. I mean, you saw it coming. So for those of you who don't understand, Roddy was not only a great athlete, Roddy was a great teammate. Do you realize how easy it could have been for Roddy to say, oh, y'all getting this wide receiver? I'm getting ready to go. I'm getting up out of here. Roddy stayed, and Roddy still had a couple of good years here. Again, before the unfortunate 2015 clash with Kyle Shanahan and the great Indianapolis Colts game, as y'all remember, I'm going to throw it to you 3 times, see what you can do. Tidy says in 2006, many fans were pushing for Schaub to start over Vick. People don't remember in 2001 when Vick was drafted, Matt Schaub was drafted in the 4th round. So they basically reinvented their roster that year, that same year. Matt Schaub, when Vick was hurt, Matt Schaub put up some numbers, which is why he went on to go to the Texans. And to Tidy's point, there were folks that were thinking, we have a chance to have a more wide open offense if Schaub comes in here. Now, unfortunately, by 2007, the Texans came coming. And so, that's why we didn't have a backup plan when the Vick situation happened. If Matt Schaub had still been in place in 2007, we might not be having the story about Matt Ryan. Because Schaub was a solid quarterback, but you weren't going to pull Mike Vick at that time. And if you were Jim Mora, who was already hanging on by a string as the head coach, you weren't going to pull the most exciting, polarizing person, not in Atlanta, in the NFL at that time. Mike Vick was the show. When you look at the intros and the vignettes for everything. It was about Mike Vick. You saw Atlanta, Mike Vick. It wasn't like you had, now when they have a choice between Julio and Matt and whatever. No, you weren't going to do that. So, Kibia says Harry Douglas. Harry Douglas was a solid player. Give Harry a lot of credit. I remember the year that Julio went down, and Roddy was hurt a little bit that year. That was the year that Harry caught the ball for 1,000 yards. Harry is a good dude, and I personally had a chance to meet him and talk to him at the airport for a good little amount of time while we were waiting on the flight. It gave us a good year or two, but played his role as the third receiver. He was a good little receiver. Unfortunately, I think Harry's when hardcore Falcon fans think about Harry, they think about the turf monster, because that turf monster against San Francisco, that could have been the Super Bowl play. We wouldn't have been talking about 2016 as much. We could be talking about a championship here. That turf monster caught Harry Douglas, and I think every person in Atlanta, including all of us in that stadium, and I had hair then, just ripped our head off and said, "Oh my goodness, what happened?" Never really asked about that play, but that was just, whoo. Tidy said Schaub was a third-round pick. Oh, my bad, third-round pick. I apologize, brother. Something tells me the front office may have known Vick wasn't focused in Atlanta and looked for a backup plan. And look, why not? That was a good play. Bring in quarterback, bring in competition. You knew Chris Chandler was on the last leg, and you knew Chris Chandler, probably literally, but he actually played a couple of years after that, but he was nowhere near the same as the year he gave us in the Super Bowl. But smart move by them to get Matt Schaub to back him up. I don't know why I think it's third round. Great move by them, and turned out good for Matt Schaub's career. Matt Schaub, listen, a lot of people remember the interception game and the year. Matt Schaub, for a couple of years, threw for a lot of yards, was never great, but, he was all right. But as a role as a backup, he would have been good. Snowball says Jesse Toggle and John Abraham. Jesse Toggle, when we were talking about franchise guys maybe about a month or so ago, I went back and looked in the 90s just to see why Jesse Toggle wasn't an all-decade player. And remember, it is going away from me now, but I saw one of the guys that was a Hardy Nicholson, and I know he was pretty good, but Jesse was unfortunately not given shine because the Falcon teams were so bad in the 90s, aside of the 1998 team. I know we had the 1995 team, the one that Bobby Abreu won the last game to get us in the playoffs. Then they gave it back to Jeff George, and he was garbage. Jesse just, unfortunately, too many bad teams in between the good teams. Too legit to quit, 1995 and 1998, over a 10-year span. I'm expecting you at least to make the playoffs every other year. In the NFL, a great franchise makes the playoffs every year. A decent franchise makes it 70% of the time. A good franchise should make it every other year. 3 times in 10 years is not good. And unfortunately, you become a product of your team's success. And that's usually how it's defined. So Jesse, good job. John Abraham, who was great with the Jets too, definitely had his best time, I think, here in Atlanta. I just remember him just being being I don't know, back when we had a true threat on the edge. He might have been the last true threat on the edge with respect to Patrick Kearney, who was decent, but still didn't put the fear in you with that dip under like John Abraham would do. I always forget my moment with John Abraham has more to do with Mike Smith. The same year we're talking about, the championship year, when we had already clinched everything and we were 12-3 going into the final game, and Mike Smith decides, I'm going to play my starters that last game against Tampa Bay. And he played the starters. And I think he was trying something different. But so before I throw him totally on the bus, the Falcons have been to the playoffs 3 of the last 4 years. And before that, they were going into the resting thing. So he tried something different. He said, I'm going to play everybody to keep us fresh. We got to buy whatever. John Abraham gets hurt that game. I think if John Abraham is healthy against young Colin Kaepernick, I think it becomes, and I think he tried to play, but it was obvious that he was hurt. He hurt himself in that Tampa game, and he didn't play the Seattle game, I don't think. And if he did, same thing, he was still hurt. But I think a healthy John Abraham, our defense shows up better against Frisco, and I think we win. Just my thoughts. Tidy said, Harry Douglas was always overrated by our fan base to me. Sorry, guy. You know what it is, Tidy? He's a local guy. And I think when you're local, you're probably going to get a little bit more, a little more shine. So just like DJ Shockley, some people kind of have his legend a little bit more than it. I mean, he won the SEC championship, but at the same time, some people will tell you DJ Shockley is one of the best quarterbacks in Georgia history. And I say, yeah, but at the same time, the legend, I guess. But yeah, Harry Douglas, again, solid third receiver. That's about the best I can do. But I think that has more to do with their local ties here in Atlanta more than it has to do with him being great. And these are people's favorite players. That doesn't have to be the most. These folks don't have to be the franchise leader in yards or receptions and things like that. I know I keep spouting William Andrews' name out, but William Andrews doesn't lead the Falcons in rushing, career rushing. But people were smart enough to know that his impact on that team during that time was so strong that it led to some of the highest parts of this franchise's history. Mike Smith caught so much flack for playing the starters that final game that John Abraham got hurt. I think what he was trying to do in Mike Smith's defense, who is all of a sudden after Quinn becoming my favorite coach, I think what he was trying to do is that the 3 out of the 4 years before that, including the year that they went 13-3 and then got shellacked here with Green Bay coming in, I think he was resting folks because in each one of those situations, we already had clinched the playoffs before the last week. I know the 13-3 year we did. I know the 10-6 year against the Giants, we had already clinched before the last week, and he rested folks. So I think he was just trying something new, and that came back to backfire to bite him in the behind. And I remember saying when he did that, I said that was not a smart move. When he had, when you have Matt Ryan and Roddy White and Julio Jones out there, and you have nothing to gain in that game. We were the number 1 seed, nothing to gain in that game, and messed around and probably should have been out of the playoffs against Seattle that year. But that John Abraham, I will never forget the thought that year saying, man, we should have we should have we should have not played him. Should have not played him. We shouldn't have played him that game. That was a big mistake. And Smith is still gonna go as one of my favorite coaches, but that was just a bad mistake. Steven, I want to say William Andrews is third behind Riggs and Turner. And I know I'm pretty sure I think Turner passed Riggs, or maybe. But I think you're right, though, Steven. I think William Andrews is third. But you also remember William Andrews, when he came back from his reconstructed knee, he was never the same after that. He didn't run as reckless as he did. No, the NFL was a different game now. Different game then than it is now. But he was such a beast. And don't forget, and I'm not forgetting about Lynn Kane, who almost one of the seasons when William ran for 1,300, Lynn Kane had 900 plus yards himself. They were close to becoming one of the first backfields to both have 1,000 yards. But the effect he had on that team to be able to give him that yard and grind, and Bartkowski being able to have a serious play action and go down the field like he did. Bartkowski was never a 5-yard. He wasn't a Drew Brees. He wasn't a 5-yard slant guy. Bart liked the yards in chunks. And when you had William Andrews and we had Lynn Kane back there that could eat up that clock, it made that 12-4 season so enjoyable. And to watch William Andrews just grind and just work that ball down. That was just a special season, as far as I'm concerned. Christian says Jamal Anderson is mine. My favorite defensive player is not even the Falcon. It's Sean Taylor. Yeah, Sean Taylor. Great player. Life cut down way too short. Definitely was an impact player and was going to be an impact player. Jamal Anderson, I will never forget how great he was that Super Bowl year. And as much as I know a lot of the shine was on Chandler that year for, him coming back and being the Grizzly veteran and leading this team, Jamal Anderson was that team. And Jamal Anderson should have been MVP that year in the NFL. But if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the same year that Terrell Davis ran for 2,000. Was that the same year? I think that was the same year he did that. So, and both of them ended up in the Super Bowl. So that was, Jamal had a year for the ages that year. That was great. I hated the very next year. I think it was against Dallas. That he tore up his knee, and he eventually came back. But again, especially when you got those big guys, when they mess up their knees, they were never the same. And Jamal was never the same after that. But he gave us a ride, man. He took us for a ride. Tidy, all-time leading rushers. Riggs 1, Turner 2, Andrews 3, Warwick Dunn 4, Jamal 5. And thanks, Tidy. I appreciate that. Warwick Dunn is kind of the missing guy sometimes. Warwick Dunn was a beast when he was here, and Vick needed him a lot to help him during that year, especially the 2004 year when we did some special things with that team, because that running game was just totally unpredictable, and we needed it that year. to get where we were going. Kivia says, some funny history. Do you remember the fight between Jeff George and June Jones when Jones benched him for throwing 5 interceptions? Absolutely. Who doesn't? They show that if you go on YouTube, they actually had something on that as well, where they were showing, him yelling at him and June Jones yelling at each other. That was, I'm trying to think, was that the year after? I'm trying to think, was that the year after the 95 playoffs, or was that the year of the 95 playoffs where that happened? It might have been the year after. Double check that for me. But yeah, that was pretty good. Steven says, wow, Jamal is 5th. I thought he was probably 4th. Forgot about Dunn, how solid he was. Again, Warwick Dunn is one of those guys that you kind of forget about. Just like receiving wise, I'm not looking at the numbers, and I'm sure Tidy is. Terrence Mathis. And Terrence Mathis came from the Jets. Terrence Mathis caught a lot of passes here in Atlanta. And he's somebody, when you start thinking about wide receivers, your first thought goes to Julio and Roddy. But when you go back and look at what Terrence Mathis did, and even during that very short period, Andre Rison was in that version of the fun and gun offense they had back in 91, and where everybody was catching passes, where Haynes was catching passes, Rison was catching passes, Michael Hayes was catching passes during that year. Terrence Mathis was a very solid receiver, kind of in that same Warwick Dunn thing. When you mention Falcon wide receivers, he has to come to the list, because looking at that game that they throw on NFL Network a lot, that Atlanta-Minnesota game, go back and look at how crucial Terrence was during that. Terrence Mathis made some catches that game, broke some tackles that game. Terrence wanted it bad that day. I give him a lot of credit. June Jones, Jeff George fight was in 96. And the reason why I was thinking that was after the playoff year, because during the playoff year, it was kind of a little bit of a resurgence from Jeff George when he came here. And then I want to say it was the 19th, and y'all help me remember. Jeff George was a Raider, and he came in, and they barely beat us. And I think Bobby Hebert? No, it wasn't Bobby Hebert. Oh, losing my mind on the quarterback at that time. And they came in and they beat us, and Jeff George ran around the stadium after the game. And I remember folks were we were up and they barely won. And Jeff George ran around like he had won the Super Bowl. And he was running around the stadium, and folks were throwing stuff at him and everything. And I was just laughing my behind off, because I was just saying to myself, I said, yeah, that was crazy. Eminem, Mathis, and who? I'm trying to think what you're talking about. Tidy, all-time wide receiver leaders: Jet Jones, Roddy White, Terrence Mathis, Alfred Jenkins, and Bad Moon Rise. And it goes back to my point. I know Tidy and a couple of you other guys tease me about my yesteryear and having this fondness for the past Falcons. But Alfred Jenkins, that's just that guy, man. That's dude. Yeah, y'all just don't know that he could go long for it. He could go short for it. Again, Morris Brown made. But that man was a bad man. Andre Rison, man, you start thinking about what he meant to that team. And that year, Dion was going out for passes too. That year, that Chris Miller just lit it up. You think about the year he had that year, and when 4,000 yards was a huge deal. Now 4,000 yards is the average. You don't do 4,000 yards, you're probably considered a failure. But back then, nobody cared. They could care less about a running game, even though I think Metcalf still ran for quite a bit that year. So you know how that goes. Steve, don't start talking about them Falcon players from the 50s. Look, man, it's hard. Look, one day, some of these folks who are on here now that are in their 20s, we're gonna go 30 years in the future, and they're gonna be new guys on the Falcons team. And y'all remember Julio Jones? And they were like, who? And it's gonna be the same thing. It's gonna pass over, man. That's the beauty of this game and the evolution of what we had in football, which goes way back to my point about the Matt Ryan thing and not being afraid to evolve. And hopefully this restructure is something that we can look at as for the now. But boy, would it be a strong statement for this franchise to go out and draft a quarterback at number 4? I think you make a strong statement to not only the fan base in Atlanta by saying, not only do we hear you, but we know we have to protect the future. If the two words I kept hearing from Arthur and from Terry, and Terry said it 2 or 3 times, is sustained success. He didn't say patch it up success. He said sustained success for the future. Now, if by some miraculous that Matt Ryan can come back and be comeback player of the year and lead us back to those same heights, more power to him. But until then, I go get the best insurance policy I can get. And that's one of these young cats that Arthur Smith can take and say, you know what? You haven't been taught an NFL offense. Let me teach you one. Let me guide you and help you to make this team the best it can be. And guess what? With these second and third tier players that we're going to be picking up, you might want to think about your future right now. Dude, if Matt Ryan goes 6-10, if Matt Ryan goes 8-8 this year, I don't want to say gone with the wind and burn Atlanta down, but you talk about defaulting on PSLs? Oh my goodness. Especially after making all this change. I think this franchise, if you make all the changes that you do and bring in a new quarterback and say, yeah, Matt, maybe this year and left that contract alone, I think the fans would be willing to accept the mulligan year. Because they know the franchise is in flux. But when you make a move like you did last week, you're almost saying, let's stay the course. Let's see what we got. And I'm not sure if that's what people want to hear. I don't think that is. Steven says, who was the other M? Oh, you know what? Eminem, somebody, that dang tighty, you were talking about that the other day. Mathis and, who were we talking about the other day, tighty? The Eminem, you were talking about that the other day. Help me. Christian, Steve, do you think Matt can get us back to the Super Bowl? No. I think Matt is a good quarterback. I think Matt could use a change of scenery himself. I think this franchise, as constructed, I don't think he can do it, man. And when I look at the obstacles that we have this upcoming year, when you talk about Tampa, and when you start talking about, other teams that are making moves with money that they're able to do, we are basically taking most of the team that went 4-12 and going out and getting second and third tier players to come play. Your best bet to make a playoff this year depends on how you draft. This team is 100%, in my opinion, not going to be based on the guys who are here. We've seen the results they give us. This team's energy, this team's passion, this team's goals are going to be set by those players who were drafted this year. That's the influx of energy you're going to have. Because for everybody that's waving the flag and the pom-poms for Matt, for Julio, for Grady, for Dion, yeah, I'm not leaving them out because those are multimillionaire guys, double-digit millionaire guys right now who are on a team that underachieved the last 3 or 4 years. 3 years, mostly. I can't help but to point the finger. So when these new folks who are pulling the strings come in, it's up to them to say, well, we can't do anything this year. So while we can't do anything this year, let's go draft the best we can draft. That includes quarterback. And put these guys on the team and say, let's try the best we can this year. But Matt Ryan back to the Super Bowl, I don't think he can do it. I really don't. Christian, I don't. Am I rooting for him to? Absolutely. He gets us to the playoffs and he gets, dude, Matt is my quarterback. Matt is my Atlanta Falcon quarterback. Of course I'm going to root for him. Of course I'm going to go for it. But do I personally think he can? Nah, I don't. Tony Martin, that's who it was. That's it, Tony Martin. Absolutely. Forgot all about Tony Martin. Forgot about him. San Diego, right? Came from San Diego. Came over. Yeah. Christian said, good. We both agree. Watch him go to San Francisco. Yeah, well, if you were going to do that, if you were going to see him go to San Francisco, it would have been nice for him to do that before they restructure. Because, see, this is the problem. Even if we were to move away from Matt next year, there's a $48 million gap that we have to, a dead cap that we have to make up. Just because you trade him doesn't mean you're going to save any money. You might save on the salary you have to pay him, but that's $48 million sitting there next year because of this restructuring. It was only 41, not only 41. It was $41 million this year. I thought what they were going to do, let him ride out this year, draft a quarterback. And this is killing me, and I'm so sorry that I keep bringing this up because it when did it become martial law? When did it become the absolute must that because you draft a quarterback that high, that they have to play this year? I don't know. Did Jordan Love play at all last year? Did Aaron Rodgers play at all in 2 years or 3 years when Favre was there? I think we're so microwave where if we draft it, he's got to play. And I get the investment. That's a huge investment. Fourth pick. That's a big investment. I understand. But for those who just think that just because you draft them number one, especially a quarterback, that doesn't mean anything. Lamar Jackson was a number one pick. I know he's 32nd. It's still a first round pick. He sat for half the season. There's nothing guaranteed, folks. And I don't even know where that logic comes from. I don't get it. Christian, I think the reason we keeping Matt for extra years is because they want Matt to be like Favre and mentor our new guy. I hope so too, but that's an expensive tutor. I've seen some tutor rates with my kids. That tutor rate of $40 million is pretty steep. I don't know about you. What's going on, Dre? How you doing, sir? Armani, what is going on? My favorite Falcons of all time will forever be number 7. And y'all know which number 7 I'm talking about. Young Wei. No, I had his jersey, his shoes. I was a huge fan. I stayed after Mike got arrested. I fell in love with the colors and the city and the fans. And even Mike isn't above the love I have for that logo. Okay. Michael Vick, and my wife had a chance to meet him before I did. Michael Vick brought the promise of a young black quarterback, not only to the city of Atlanta, but to the NFL at that time. To those who don't want to hear that, cover your ears because it's true. Mike Vick had the opportunity to be that guy. He had the opportunity to be that ambassador to the folks who are coming now. Because as far as, you know, it was a year here with a black quarterback, a year there. But Mike was number 1. He was number 1 with a bullet. And he came here to Atlanta. And I can't even express how exciting that time was. And for those who don't understand that love, you got to be from Atlanta, probably. You do. It was different. There was people who were rooting for him, and for the first time got somebody to say, that's somebody that looks like me that's up there quarterbacking that team. It was a different feel. It was a different excitement. Boy, when my wife and I, we were young in marriage then, we're traveling down the road to those New Orleans games. Oh my goodness, it was different. Mike brought that. So listen, that's nothing but love for Mike. Mike will be the first one to tell you he derailed his own career and tell you he had some wasted years. But that doesn't diminish what he brought to this franchise and to this city. And the unfortunate thing about Matt Ryan, there are still people that take that 4 or 5 year span that Vick was here, and they want that same when somebody's taken out, not by the franchise, by himself, self-inflicted, and that's taken away. I think so many people were hurt and wanted to blame somebody. Mike will tell you himself, he blamed himself. Matt Ryan had the unenviable task of coming in here and trying to win that fan base over. And in some folks' eyes, he never will. In my eyes, I moved on. Because when Vick started wearing Eagles uniform, I was done with Vick. I waxed poetic after he left football. But I could care. When he came in here with Philadelphia against Matt Ryan, oh my goodness, I wanted Matt to stomp them that year. We won. And no, I'm not trying to be big balling and stuff by telling this story, but I think I've told it before. Our family, we got a chance to, I don't know if it was a birthday or whatever it was, but we got a chance to sit in the box seats for that game that he came back with Philly. And right next to us in the box was Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg. And he had on his Philadelphia Vick jersey. And he was kind of talking smack back before. And granted, I might have been in a different age bracket where Sometimes words flowed out pretty much, but I remember it was a close game, but we did end up winning the game. And I remember trying to call him out at the end, but he took off, I'm sure, back to LA or Weedland or wherever he went to. But just a special time. It's special. No, it is what it is. Tidy, it's not martial law. It's just an excuse some fans give not to draft a quarterback. You kind of want the luxury of having your rookie quarterback sit and learn from a seasoned vet. And for those that don't remember, that's kind of how it used to be. That's really actually how it used to go. And I know you can't make used to 2021. I get it. But though there have been very few quarterbacks aside of ours that has had out of the box success. Not Peyton, not Eli, not Tom Brady, not who was I just thinking about a second ago? But just go down the list. Very few that come right off the rip. Maybe Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson had an all-time defense with him. No excuses. Russell still did his thing. But very few, y'all. Christian, Aaron started his second year. Favre mentored him for a whole season on play calling. Tidy, Pat Mahomes sat down and learned for an entire year, and he said he just learned how to read the defense this past season. Tidy said Rodgers didn't start to his fourth. Oh, you say the second? Yeah. Rodgers sat for like 3 years. Yeah, you know what? That just passed me by, Christian. Yeah, Rodgers sat for a couple of years before he got his shot. RJ, I hope Falcons draft a quarterback with the 4th pick. It only makes sense for the team. Armani, it's not law, man. People just want an excuse not to draft a quarterback. And I don't know what people are scared of. I really don't. I really don't. There are folks in other groups that I sit there and I just watch the love fest. And I say to myself, I guess I can separate it. This week, I can tell you Matt Ryan is the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. And if he stinks it up next week, I'm probably going to tell you he's the worst quarterback to put on a Falcons uniform. And that's not wishy-washy. That's a fan, not fanatic. That's the definition that I move and groove with my team. That's the only thing that stays the same. But I'm going to call it like I see it. Those who just infatuated with the man is just interesting. Trey, can I ask a question? What happens if we do draft a quarterback with the 4th pick and he is a bust? How will the fan base react to that? Like Jamarcus Russell was with the Raiders. Well, you know what, Dre? Until you try it, it's kind of hard. It's a great question. And I'm sure those who in Tennessee talk about Mariota and Tampa Bay that talk about Jameis probably in some ways act the same, even though I don't think either of those guys were bust. I just think they might have both been overrated at the time when they came out. But if it's a bust, I mean, you got to take a chance. You know what I would rather do? I would rather take a chance on somebody that the majority of folks who scout and are talking about these quarterbacks are talking Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, Lance. This is the best top of the draft quarterbacks we've had in a while. I would rather take a chance on taking somebody, trying hard, not just sitting them down and saying, hold the Microsoft tablet, the Surface, but somebody who a coach is saying, I'm going to invest in you because you're going to be doing that next year. And if we're a bust 2 years down the line, so be it. But you got to try. I would rather have that coach that goes out and tries. Because right now we're just playing safe. We're being safe. And it would be one thing if you were staying with Tom Brady being safe. The one thing if you were staying with Aaron Rodgers and being safe because you're still going to the playoffs every year. We've lost for 3 straight years. And there are still people that, yeah, but the defense. Yeah, but the offensive line. Yeah, but, and I keep thinking about games against Seattle, games against Carolina, games against the Chargers last year that we had an opportunity to win, and our quarterback couldn't close the deal. So you don't get a star by saying, yeah, I think he's going to be a bust, so I'm going to let him slide. I think you get a star for saying, you know what? I got him. I tried everything I can do. I tried everything in my power. And for the record, Jamarcus Russell, there were a lot of people that were warning against Jamarcus Russell when he got drafted. The Raiders being the Raiders, I think they just were the Raiders at that time. Tidy said, Ryan unfortunately had to come in after we lost our superstar and also being our first social media quarterback. So he does get a lot of unwarranted criticism. And if for those who always say Vick didn't get that criticism, Vick was drafted on the onset of MySpace. And we were still playing Nintendo Wii. So social media, Facebook was not even, I'm not even sure if it was around. We were still stealing stuff from Napster at the time that Vick was here. Social media wasn't a big deal. People didn't put my information out there, let people see my pictures every day, let them see my comments. No way. Vick would have got crucified if social media was out back then. Crucified. Armani, we lost the first game. Vick came back and won we lost the first game. Vick came back and won the second game, right? The one where in Atlanta, we won. The one where he came to the Georgia Dome, we beat Philadelphia that night. That night, we won that game. Yep. Christian, Matt's just a boring quarterback to watch, and he has nothing special like other quarterbacks. He's still elite. I hope you're being facetious. The problem is with that, Christian, as much as everybody likes to make a top 10 list of elite, and the elite tag is probably the most overused tag in sports history, along with the term the GOAT, along with tanking, just one of those bullet word or bullet terms that people say. There are probably about 4 quarterbacks every year that people just look at and say, oh, I don't care what he does, he's going to be good. I think right now we might be down to about 3. I still think, look, as much to my chagrin, Brady is still playing on a level higher than most quarterbacks. Is he the most talented at 42? No, but he gets the job done. Patrick Mahomes is out of this world. He got exposed from a bad offensive line during the Super Bowl. And Aaron Rodgers is still somebody that when you look at him across the field, you say, not sure if we're going to get super Aaron or we going to get underrated Aaron. Those are about the only three. Tidy, we beat Vick both times. That remind me of the first game. I'm trying to remember the first game. Only game I'm relating to is the game where he came here. And I think it was Monday night, if I'm not mistaken. It was either Monday night or Sunday night. I know it was prime time. And Vick came to, it was Vick's first trip back to Atlanta as the Philly quarterback. And we did beat him that game. The only thing that sucks for Ryan is that he's the first social media quarterback for this fan base. Kibby, I remember how Eminem was Mathis and Martin. Absolutely. Amani said they have a love affair with Matt Ryan, and I don't have a problem with fans hanging on to a player. That's part of what we were supposed to be talking about, your favorite Falcon player. But sometimes, even when your favorite player starts diminishing, I'll give it a perfect example with Tidy was talking about Roddy White. I think even Tidy will tell you that even though the way Roddy White kind of got phased out was embarrassing to him, I still think that it was his time. And there was some, if you remember that summer from 15 to 16, oh my goodness, when we got rid of Roddy and they were like, Muhammad, who? Sanu, he couldn't even beat out AJ Green. Why are we bringing him here? If y'all remember that summer, there were folks hot mad about Roddy White not making the team the next year or being cut. Hot. But it was his time. And if you remember, the last thing I heard from Roddy White that year, that he was supposed to be being invited to the San Francisco for was it a tryout, physical, or whatever, and you didn't hear another word from Roddy. So there was something in Roddy that also probably said, yeah, I'm done. Christian, people are scared because of these reasons. They love Ryan. Last college season was cut short due to COVID, and we didn't see a lot of action. Rookie quarterbacks are hit or miss depending on who fits this scheme. That's a very good point about COVID. We have to keep in mind that Trey Lance didn't play. He only played one game last year. Everything that you're basing him on is based on 2 years ago when he didn't throw an interception on a Division II team. So, look, buyer beware. I hear you. Absolutely. And every team is dealing with this, not just the Falcons. Every team is dealing with the uncertainty of what we're getting because we haven't had a chance to get a full scouting review of this player. Everybody. And that's not just quarterbacks. This guy, Penny Sewell, who everybody's talking about is can't miss, generational, whatever, he had a whole year off. I don't know what this cat's going to be. We're basing everything off 2 years ago. I saw Justin Fields this year. I saw him get hurt. I saw him have a hip pointer and still throw for 300 yards against Alabama. I'm not trying to say he's great, but I'm also saying, those are the things you have to go by. Everybody has the same handicap this year. Armani, trade. If I get fired from work tomorrow, how am I going to? What's that? How am I going to know if I don't go in and try? I gotta see. You were probably answering somebody. Sorry about that. Catching y'all conversation. Christian, overall, after watching college football, Lance is the best bet. Fields is not good enough to lead any team to the playoffs. Listen, I know there are a lot of people that are low on Fields as far as, I know the Ohio State thing. And there are some people who just think Lance has just more raw ability right now. And you have to think Lance is probably somebody who's more in step that would probably benefit from watching a professional quarterback for a year. Lord willing, now that Matt is our quarterback this year, that he gets hurt. But that's one of the reasons I like Lance over Fields. Dub J says, Steven, I know you are sitting back chuckling at some of these idols in this group. Tell the truth. Hey, man. Look, the one thing about me, Dub, I am opinion friendly. Whether it's something I disagree with totally or not. So if the lovers come, let them come. I just, I'm going to tell you how I feel, and we're going to roll like that. Good to have you in here, Jay. Christian, Steve, what I meant by boring is look at Patrick. He can throw on the run. He has a sidearm throw like a baseball player. What I mean for Matt is you never know when he is going to show out or is hit and miss. And with Matt being more in the twilight of his career, we've had too many flashes of bad than good. So I can understand what you mean by saying boring. And yeah, listen, if boring wins, that's fine. But right now, boring is not winning. Boring is 79, 4-12. You can throw for 4,000 yards for 20 straight years. But if you're not winning, it's not doing me any good. Toddy said, yeah, fans were highly upset about Roddy being cut. He was a big-time Falcon favorite, and because of that, we didn't initially welcome Sanu, especially at $7 million per season. Sanu was a great free agent in hindsight, did well for us. And, I remember I'm not a Cincinnati fan, but I definitely kept up with Cincinnati. Ever since Cincinnati and San Francisco went at it in both Super Bowls, I went for Cincinnati both times. I was not a big Frisco fan at all. So I've always kind of kept a little eye on Cincinnati. And I remember Sanu being that Robin to Batman for A.J. Green over in Cincinnati. I knew we were getting somebody good. And I thought we were getting somebody maybe a couple of years younger than Roddy. And he came in and filled the exact spot we needed for Julio. Julio had become the number one receiver in 2015. And there's no disrespect to Roddy, but it was probably easier for Sanu to come in telling him, hey, you're going to be number two. You're going to be the sidekick. We just need you to be reliable enough when they double, triple team Julio for you to catch the ball. And Sanu passed with flying colors. To your point, probably one of the guys in that category of some of the best free agent signings in the last 10 years for us. Dub J said, thing is, unless you're a legitimate beat writer, we don't know a thing about how this thing plays out. But here's the thing, Dub J. That's what this is for, man. This is about opinions. If we were all beat writers, we probably wouldn't be on here talking now. Or you wouldn't be on here responding to a lot of amateurs. Right? RJ, I think our general manager has a few moves to make. I don't think they restructure Matt's contract to fully rebuild. I don't think they did most of that to rebuild. I think they did most of that to get under the salary cap. But here's the problem, RJ. With what we're left with right now, there's not a lot to do. I mean, we are basically waiting for free agents to try team A, B, C, D, and E before they get to us. Like we see everybody we knew we weren't day one free agent signing. We knew that. And we probably knew we weren't day two. And the folks we are signing right now are roster fillers. We got Dean Pease has his work set. His work is cut out for him. He has to take pieces and make this a defense. Has it been done before? Yeah, of course it has. Taking folks that were put together for a year or two. I'll say the defense that Matt Ryan inherited in 2008 was not meant to be that great. But they pieced those guys together and they turned out to be decent enough to go 10-6 and make the playoffs. Sustained success. That's the goal. Sustained success. Brother Sean, how you doing, man? Good to see you. I was one of those fans who was hot about Roddy that whole year, and it sent me over the top when he got cut. Sean, that was a big summer, man. And for those that don't remember, I keep alluding to the Indianapolis game because that was the public humiliation for Roddy. Because if you remember, there was a big, why is Roddy not getting the ball? Why is Roddy not doing this? And then the first 3 plays, they foolishly threw the ball like 3 straight times. And I think he caught one, dropped one, and lost yards on whatever it was. It was almost like Kyle Shanahan was being kind of a turd, for lack of better words. And I think that was meant to embarrass him. So to your point, Sean, there were plenty of folks who were upset about Roddy White. Now, the greatest thing that turns around folks being ticked off about that is winning. Because at the end of 2016, I'll guarantee it, by the middle of 2016, when we were, 6-4, 7-4, whatever we were, closing in the end, nobody was thinking about Roddy White. Taylor Gabriel was catching bombs. Sanu was getting his field. Julio getting hurt back and forth, but still making his money. Austin Hooper was catching passes his rookie year. Shoot, Aldrick Robinson was making catches that year. Winning cures everything. I said it before, and I'll say it again. Cures everything. Roddy White might have been the most, at that time, might have been the most polarizing Falcon at that time in 2015. Not Matt Ryan, Roddy White. And when Roddy left, that summer was tough on sports talk. And they got rid of Roddy. Nobody picked up Roddy. And the Falcons went to the Super Bowl. And the rest is history. Christian, are you going to be pissed? Steve, are you going to be pissed off if we don't take a quarterback at number 4? Not if what we do is helping the team. And when I say that, we have a lot of roster spots to fill. We have one safety. Well, now we have 2. I think, what's his name? Eric Harris. We have 2 safeties on our squad right now. We are still lacking a linebacker. We got rid of a couple of our rotational defensive linemen. There is still a lot of work to do. So it wouldn't tick me off. Would I be a little upset? Maybe. Because I'm looking for this franchise to push the restart button at the most important position. Matt Ryan and his style of play, and this has nothing to do with mobile more than it has to do with athletic. That quarterback Matt Ryan was drafted in is 2008. That quarterback is gone. Aside of the guy in Tampa, that quarterback is gone. You look at every team. Carolina. Even Drew Brees was the last of a breed. But the problem was Drew Brees was still winning. When you're still winning and you're that quarterback, it makes a difference. Matt's not winning. And you could argue it was 3 of them left. Well, 4. It was 4 of them left. Brady, Brees, Rivers, Matt. Brady, playoffs, Super Bowl. Brees, playoffs. Rivers, playoffs. Matt Ryan regressed from 7-9 to 4-12. Not entirely his fault, but when I'm seeing that athleticism or lack thereof getting sacked and holding on, and this year John Harris will probably throw flowers at me for this. For the first time, I really realized how long Matt holds on to that ball this year. He held on to the ball a third of those sacks were on Matt. Because even if the coverage is downfield, you throw the ball away. You don't worry about your completion stats. You throw the ball away. You don't take sacks. If it's 2nd and 4 and you drop back and you take a 7-yard sack, that kills you. If you throw the ball out of bounds, you come back for 3rd and 4. That killed us last year. Tidy, Kyle was trolling the fan base and Roddy at the same time with those passes to Roddy. Absolutely. And I remember, and they talked about that for a long time because that was the 5-0 start year, and we started off so well. And then when we started losing, that became the topic because Roddy kind of mouthed off in public. Yeah. Sean said 16 really did help calm those feelings. Yes, he did. Christian, maybe we could sign Malik Hooker to be the other safety. I was looking at a couple of those folks. Look, those folks will come to Atlanta when they've exhausted all other choices. I think Atlanta is going to be one of the last teams that people come to. Because not only the difference with New Orleans being over the cap and Atlanta being over the cap is New Orleans still has a little bit of nucleus on the defensive side off of a team that's won the division 4 straight years. Who wants to go to a 4-12 team with a quarterback that looks like this might be it the last year or two? And this is not saying Matt can't throw the ball. I'm not going with the noodle arm and the blah, blah, and all that crap. I don't listen to all that. I judge by what you're doing each week. You have 16 opportunities to prove to your fan base each year that you're the man. Might be 17 this year. We'll find out. You got 16 opportunities. This year, you failed in 12. And some would argue that the quarterback directly probably had a hand in about 4 of those. It's time to move on. It's time to come to 2021. And yes, you're doing what the others are doing. When I mentioned those 4 quarterbacks that we talked about, look around you. Look what people are drafting. Look at all 4 quarterbacks that you see. All 4 quarterbacks. Nobody's saying that they're speed. I'm not trying to say Trevor Lawrence is speed, even though Trevor Lawrence, them long legs got to run it a few times this year. Dude is faster than I thought. Zach Wilson is no joke. Might be Taysom Hill who can throw. And the athleticism with Justin Fields, he's shown you that. And Trey Lance as well, with that cannon he has. So it's just a matter of trying to get something new, y'all. We've got to. Man, I don't know how y'all have been great today. We stayed on this thing way too long. I need to catch up with some of this NCAA stuff. Man, Illinois, just the whole wow. But I knew this was going to happen with COVID, that some of these guys were going to get the upsets. So I wanted to get a chance to watch a couple of those games and see how that ends up. Thanks for joining me today. Again, the countdown to the draft, folks, it'll be here around the corner before you know it. If we have any major free agency pickups, I'll come on and pop on and we'll holler about it. Y'all take care, man. Have a great Sunday evening, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.